what exactly is the job of a PM. I think this part is one of the most unclear parts in the industry, and rightly so, because there is not like one type of PM. For example, like you can be a backend developer, you can be good in Java and some of the related technologies, but for PMs, the skill set is not that tangible. So let's talk about some of the common things that are common across different companies for the product manager role, and then we can dive deeper into some of the case studies. All right. So the first key responsibility of a product manager within any team or within any organization is to figure out what game are we playing, what game should we be playing. And by game here, I mean what kind of things should we be focusing on, what kind of products we should be building. So in like simple terms, saying that defining the product strategy. So you see a cute little guy on the right with a guitar. So I'm just going to use an example. If you want to build and I like learning guitar, so I'm just using this analogy for obvious reasons. I cannot share a lot about the stuff that I'm doing at Google, so I just decided to use an analogy and an example for how to think about this. So think about a case where you are in a company and you have to build an app for guitar learners. So the user base is guitar learners. Now there are a lot of questions that come into picture as you are thinking about building an app for guitar learners. One is like, what kind of solution should we be building? So should it be like a peer-to-peer network of like guitar tutors and people who want to learn? So it could be like a Uber for guitar, which is connecting like, which is kind of a gig economy. The second option could be you can just create a collection of guitar chords. So think about it as Wikipedia. So you are not basically helping people connect to like tutors, rather you're just providing a list of guitar chords. The third potential option could be you actually are creating a tutor app where the users can actually play the guitar along with some of the things that are shown on the screen and kind of learn by doing. So think about a karaoke style guitar learning app where as you're playing, you can actually see the notes moving with you, and then it identifies when you have made a mistake and then gives you back, right? So all three of these are the right kind of are potential solutions that you could be building for a guitar learner. Which way should we be going? And that is the job of a product manager, to figure out how to like evaluate what solution to build. On similar lines, they have to identify for the product, like what is the goal, like why we are building this, and what is the overall goal for the company. Does the company want to increase users? Does the company want to earn more revenues with this particular app, or this is like just a side project that they are testing it out? So based on these, a lot of answers to the product changes. The other things are around like what game we should be playing is just understanding the user pain points. So based on the user pain points, the product manager basically figures out, oh, we should actually be building this and not this. And then the last is like, what is the overall industry and the trend in this area? So the PMs basically go out, figure out like, hey, in the music learning industry, these are kind of the trends that are going on. We shouldn't be targeting X and Y because it is a crowded space and it is not solving the user problem, versus this sounds like more interesting. So just to recap, the first and one of the most important responsibilities of the PM is to figure out what game the team should be playing, aka what is the strategy for the product. The second high level responsibility that a PM has is around prioritization of efforts. While this may seem like very intuitive or easy, like, hey, yeah, we just have like we have the list of features and we just have to prioritize. This is one of the most difficult things. So continuing with the example of the guitar playing, uh, let's say that as a PM you have decided that we want to build a tutoring app for guitar. So guitar tutoring app, the karaoke for guitar that I was talking about earlier, right? So with respect to that, the PM goes out and figures out like what are the kind of features that we should be building. So it could be library of chords, lessons with progressive difficulty, record actually what the user is actually playing on their guitars, and maybe like pick up mistakes using an ML model. So an ML model is always listening to what you're playing. And then based on what you're playing, it can identify whether the chord is right or wrong, and then nudge you that, hey, like this doesn't seem right. You should play it like this, right? So once there is a list of these features, and there could be like a lot many of these like interesting features that come out, the PMs essentially figure out what the prioritization of these should be. Which of these should be built in phase one, which is kind of a minimum viable product phase. Which of them should be in phase two. So here I add a ML model here because this is a good to have feature, but it is not the core product in itself somehow. So this should kind of go in phase two. And similarly, they do it for 25 other for other features. But one of the hardest things to do as a product manager is figuring out which features we should not be building. And at the end of the day, it comes down to like resourcing, and engineering resources are limited. So prioritization is usually a balancing act between what the users are requesting, what the business needs are, and what is good for the product in the short and the long term. So you have to manage the short term versus long term. Because if as a PM you're working only on short term things, you will not kind of hit the long term goals of the project. And if you're not working on, if you're only working on the long term things, then kind of short term takes a hit and your user base may not grow. So uh, I love this quote, like if everything is a focus, nothing is a focus. And it is the responsibility of the PM to define what the focus of the team should be through ruthless prioritization. So this was second, prioritization of efforts. And the third high level responsibility is around execution. So at the end of the day, the job of a product manager is to ship products. And they need to do whatever it takes, and they essentially do whatever it takes to ship the product. So some examples of that is having clear specifications doc on what needs to be built and why we should be building that. Analyzing user data. So if you don't have a data analyst or a data scientist in your team, you as a PM would be responsible for crunching the data and doing all sorts of things. So for example, if you look at the data and figure out, hey, like some of these lessons are being played a lot. So based on that, you can take a call that, hey, like I should add this as a featured lesson on the homepage of my app or something like that. So like good product managers usually go and see the data almost every day and figure out what the user trends are. As a PM, you're also the quality analyst of the product. Like if you do not have a dedicated QA, you have to be the dedicated QA. If you don't uh, like to play guitar, or if you don't play guitar, I'm afraid you have to kind of play your own game. You have to learn to play guitar and test your product every day. One more is the PM works a lot with cross-functional teams and fill in for cross-functional needs. So in a startup, if there may not be a marketing campaign manager or a sales guy or a UX guy or a partnerships guy, it is essentially the responsibility of a PM to essentially fill in all these gaps. So for this slide, in a nutshell, the idea is that the PMs do whatever it takes to ship strong products. So these were the three things, as I said: figure out the product strategy, think about the prioritization, and then drive the execution. I think at a high level, these are sort of the three most important responsibilities that a PM has in any given organization.